our instinct is to be hard on ourselves, and I definitely do that. But those moments have lessened as well for me, having to do with being more comfortable in my own skin and having my self-esteem at a place where it has never been before. And that feels really good too, to just not sink into those moments as easily as I used to.
That's Ruth Zukerman, a force in the fitness industry known for co-founding SoulCycle and Flywheel Sports. And this is Make Yourself at Home, the podcast that takes you into the homes of people you admire to show you a side you don't usually get to see. I'm Kristen Twyford, and every week we'll talk to someone at the top of their career to explore holistic success and how work and home are inextricably intertwined. Along the way, we hope to inspire you to live well, whatever that means to you. Make Yourself at Home is presented by Nines, the household management app designed to help you manage your home and everything that comes with it, so you can live with ease. Today, we're in Ruth Zukerman's home in New York City, talking about living alone and being comfortable with herself, and how she's finally owning her success. Ruth never imagined starting a business, let alone two of the biggest names in fitness. She first started taking spin classes as she was going through a divorce and quickly found how empowering they could be. She became an instructor at the Reebok Club and built a loyal following, and in 2006, co-founded SoulCycle at the age of 48. Just a few years later, she left to start Flywheel Sports, one of SoulCycle's first competitors. But there's a lot more to the story. As SoulCycle became a cult phenomenon, Ruth's partnership with her co-founders fell apart, a moment that hit hard personally and left Ruth feeling betrayed and stuck. In this conversation, Ruth shares that story and other challenging moments that she's learned to see in a positive light, how her setbacks have paved the way for her success, and why today she feels more comfortable in her own home and in her own skin than she ever has before. Make Yourself at Home with Ruth Zukerman. Well, Ruth, thank you so much for having us into your home. We're so excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited as well.
Me too. Well, I want to start out by talking about your home and just kind of setting the stage. Tell me a bit about where you live and why you love it.
Yeah, it's actually a very interesting story because I live on the Upper West Side. I've lived on the Upper West Side for 40 years, believe it or not,
Wow.
in various different apartments. And this particular apartment building where I live is where my daughters were born. And it was where I lived when I was married. And the marriage ultimately didn't work out. And my daughters and I had to move out. So we did, and this building where they were born always felt like a family. The staff, the doormen were so lovely, but we moved out, and we had moved out for 2 years, and then I had to leave where we were, and I needed to buy an apartment for us, and a broker showed us an apartment in the same building in which my girls were born, and at first I thought, no, I can't go back. But she said, you really should look at it. I think it really fits your needs. So we looked at it and I bought the apartment. So I'm back in the building where my girls were born. Yeah. And they grew up here and they are both grown, 32 years old twins, and they have moved out, but I'm still in the apartment. And I kind of made adjustments after they moved out to make it more mine.
What a story. That is amazing.
It is. I know.
How cool that you found yourself back there. How did it feel to go back? Was it an adjustment or?
You know, it actually felt really good because the welcoming I got from the building staff, you know, many of whom had been here for 30 years. Oh. It's just that kind of building, was so warm and lovely. And it made me feel like I was coming back home.
That is amazing.
Yes.
And what does home mean to you? We love to start out with that conversation.
Home is hugely important to me in that it's my safe place. It's a place where I feel incredibly protected and supported, because I took the steps to make it feel good for myself and make it feel like my own. And so it's really my refuge, and I can't wait to get home at the end of a day. So that must say something about the way I feel about it.
And you and I talked a little bit before this call just about, home and how living alone is something, we both live alone and we share that. And it's also, you mentioned that it's being comfortable with yourself is a big part of living alone. Tell me a little bit why you feel that way and what that means to you.
I feel that if you do live alone, it's really kind of an accomplishment in that one must evolve and get to that place, if they're really going to enjoy their home alone on their own, where they really feel good about being with themselves. And then, here we are with ourselves, by ourselves in our home. And for that reason, I think it's extra important that your home has all your creature comforts and makes you feel good. And, I think that being on my own, that evolution has been quite a long time coming and quite a process. And I'm so happy to say that through a lot of ups and downs and a lot of struggles, I finally have gotten to a point where I do really enjoy being with myself, and I feel good about myself, and I truly feel that it wasn't until then that I would really be ready to be in a relationship, with in a successful relationship with someone else.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And so for you, what do you think was the moment that helped you feel more comfortable with yourself? Like, were there sort of aha moments along the way that helped you get to this place?
Yes, I think that a lot of it had to do with taking away whatever stigmas seem to come up when it comes to being alone. And I think a lot of those stigmas happen when you are listening too much or taking in too much of what other people say, which are not always the smartest remarks. So it's very easy, if you are really impressed upon with all of these comments that you hear from other people who might just be really looking out for your best, but it doesn't really come out that way. It's very easy to start to think that being on your own and being single is a flaw. Why aren't you, I can't tell you how many times people say, I don't understand why you're not with anyone. Like, why are you not with anyone? Right. And I'm never quite sure what to do with that.
Yeah.
Because it almost sounds like an insult, like there's something wrong with me. And I think for a long time I thought that until I didn't. And I realized that, I hate to say it, but I think there are a lot of people out there who aren't alone and kind of wish they were alone. And the grass is always greener, and so I think we all fall into that where we think that we want to be that person, or that person looks happy and I'm not. But, everyone has their struggles. We know that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely true. And so I think what's really interesting, you are known for this career of building other people up. And so with your work with SoulCycle and with Flywheel, you really helped people find this sense of confidence that they might not have had before. And you were able to give that gift to so many other people. And then I think you've still had your own struggles with self-doubt, which might surprise people. I think, you seem just like you are the ultimate cheerleader, and they might look at you and think, well, she doesn't have any issues with self-confidence. Like, she's got it all figured out. And yet that's something that, you did struggle with over the years. And so do you think that helped you be able to relate to all the people who were in your classes and all the people that you worked with in your fitness career?
I mean, literally 1,000%. I can't emphasize it enough. First of all, thank you for portraying my career that way, because that's the sole reason why I started this career is simply because I was going through a really low point in my life, namely my divorce, when I found spin. And so I saw what spinning did for me. And as I was starting to feel better about my life and myself, I honestly just wanted to share it with as many people as I could. And, knowing full well, as you pointed out, that we all go through times in our lives of major struggling, and we all need some kind of tool to get us through it. And it worked so incredibly well for me. And as I said, that's why I went into it, just to be able to build other people up. And the truth is, a community was formed, but whether it was at the Reebok Club where I started teaching, or SoulCycle or Flywheel. And within this community and within every single class that each person took, or each class that I taught, we all really supported each other in those 45 minutes. It was a group effort. And so in a way, my following and my community helped me as much as I helped them.
Amazing. Yeah. And on this show, we love to explore the intersection between home and work, and sort of like home and success. And I think in your life, there are so many moments where those things are intertwined, where your personal life sort of led you to a certain choice in your career, or vice versa. And I want to go back like all the way to the beginning. When you were a little girl, you wanted to be a dancer and you had this vision for yourself. What did a successful life look like to you, both personally and professionally? What were you hoping for?
Back when I was a little girl, to be a professional dancer, maybe in musicals on Broadway, or in a modern dance company. That was my fantasy and my dream. And to be happily married to the most romantic man I could possibly imagine. I grew up watching love stories and movies, and I was always fantasizing about that. And my mother always would remind me that as a little girl, I would look at her sometimes and say, "I love love."
Oh,
I know. Because I would watch these romantic movies and get so caught up in them.
Yeah.
So,
what's your ultimate rom-com or romantic movie?
Well, let's keep in mind that I'm 64 years old. So back then, we're talking movies like Gone with the Wind. I mean, that was just like everything to me. And and so I lived quite a fantasy life, which probably didn't ultimately help me, but I answered your question.
Yeah.
So.
So that's what you pictured. And then life kind of took a lot of turns for you, and the dance career ended up being, different from what you had expected. What was the aha moment that you were like, this is maybe not my version of success anymore?
I mean, it was as literal as the fact that I needed to start learning how to support myself. I mean, I was making no money as a struggling dancer. I was working in various part-time positions that paid nothing. And I knew that I wanted to live in New York City, which, as we know, is not exactly inexpensive. And so that choice was made, and it definitely influenced me having to make this very difficult decision of giving up dance. And, I had geared my whole life toward that goal. And so suddenly, I always talk about that moment as my first kind of fish out of water moment, where I absolutely had no idea what would be next. I literally thought I wasn't even interested in anything else. I had no direction at all. And so what I learned was in that example was, you got to keep going. You don't have a choice. And so you do what you have to do. And it means sometimes taking jobs that you hate and doing things that are not your passion, because you might have to pay the bills. But I think it's important to know that, yes, we do go through phases where we might have to do that, but they all lead eventually to what you want. And that was the experience for me. And it was really twofold. It was about, accepting the fact that you might have to sit in a job that you don't love, and also taking care of yourself. And, it was the first time in my life that I had to start thinking about exercise and working out, because it was always built in for me. I was in a dance class every day. So that was important too, because you want to stay strong and you want to stay healthy and give yourself the best chance. And by doing that, that's when I found myself in an aerobics class in the 1980s, when it was all that. And little did I know that now I'm in these various kinds of group exercise classes and, if you will, getting my master's degree in exercise and teaching group classes.
Amazing. And that was such a personal choice that led to a huge career change for you. And can you think of other moments in your life where your home life or your personal choices really influenced your career, or vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it briefly, but my divorce was another moment where, I made the decision to leave the marriage, and I, at that point, was a stay-at-home mom. I was doing a little bit of fitness, but not much, because my priority was being home with the kids. And so suddenly I am out there on my own, single mom, and again, no direction. I don't know how I'm going to make money. Yes, I had, a certain degree of child support and alimony for a finite amount of years, but talk about a lifestyle change. I mean, everything changed in that moment. I never had a babysitter again. It was all on me. And because I couldn't afford one, I needed, to very smartly use the money in, for important things. And so that certainly shaped my career, because it was the period in which I found spin classes, because the spin classes were getting me through the trauma. And that was my example of staying strong, taking care of yourself when you're going through a very difficult time. If I hadn't put any emphasis on that, I never would have found the spin class, which is what defined my career.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And a couple years ago, you wrote a book, Riding High, How I Kissed SoulCycle Goodbye, co-founded Flywheel, and built the life I always wanted. And I want to ask you about that last part, because I think so many people, have something they envision like you did, and then it doesn't work out the way they thought it would, with your dance career. And for you, you were able to build something that you never quite expected, and yet it kind of fulfilled all these things for you that you had always wanted. So tell me about what that life that you always wanted and how your version of success has changed.
I think the most important aspect of what I'm talking about when I say the life I always wanted was really being able to get to a point where I could support myself and not be dependent on anyone else. Mm-hmm. And I got there. And I think a really good example is, I was just talking about this the other day. It was Thanksgiving, and we had Thanksgiving dinner. I hosted it in my house in Sag Harbor. And during that day, I was thinking about all the things I'm thankful for. And I was thinking about the fact that I was so thankful for my little house in Sag Harbor. And it's little, but it's an historic house. It was built in 1800, and it's very much me, and I absolutely love it. And I bought that at the time I decided to buy that house. I wasn't looking to buy a house. I never in a million years thought I could buy a house by myself. And I never in a million years thought I would want to buy a house by myself. And I remember I sort of just fell upon this house that was for sale. And I took one look. I thought, I'll just look at it for fun. I took one look at it, and it was a friend of mine was with me, and she was like, "You need to get this house." And I thought, I think I do. But then I went into, I don't know. And it's like, how can I pay for it? And how can I buy a house just for me? And will I be happy by myself? I mean, all of these questions came into play. And the fact of the matter is, I was able to buy it because we sold Flywheel, and it allowed me to be able to buy this house. And anyway, getting back to Thursday of Thanksgiving last week, I just felt so thankful and accomplished that I could do this all by myself.
That is amazing.
Thank
And
you.
what about that house felt like it was so you when you walked into it? What were the things that you noticed?
Well, part of the reason why I say that actually is because everyone who knows me, when they come into the house, that's the first thing they say, oh, this house is so you. And I'll look at them and I'll say, what does that mean? And, because I'm not sure what they mean, but I think what they mean is it's very warm in feeling and it's very eclectic. It's not, one particular style, and it's very organized and neat, but also there's a lot of character and color, and it's very comforting. So maybe that's what people think of me. I don't know.
Amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
It does sound very warm and inviting.
It is. Thank you.
Amazing. And thinking about, you mentioned you weren't sure if you would be happy there on your own, and thinking back at other moments in your life, what do you think helped you get to a place where you felt happy on your own? Were there moments where you feel like you wouldn't have been able to do this, and when you wouldn't have felt comfortable in your own space?
I mean, I think for so long, I never would have imagined being comfortable in my own space. A lot of that is because of the way I was raised. And, I had a mother who was very dependent on my father, and she was a very fearful woman. And so she kind of instilled that in me. And as a result, growing up under her, I was always told that I couldn't do anything on my own, that I would always need to defer to her or ask her for help or her advice. I could never come to anything on my own. And so it was quite a struggle as I was growing up to get to this point where I realized that I could. You mentioned the book, and when the book came out, it kind of became a vehicle for me to start doing speaking engagements, and I actually became a keynote speaker. Again, something I never would have imagined if you asked me 20 years ago, but I did it. I started doing it, and I was hired by Speakers Bureau, and so people, consult with them, and I get farmed out if people are interested. But I started doing these keynote speeches where I never thought I could stand up there and speak for 45 minutes without a script, without notes, and without anything. I don't even have slides. I have nothing. It's just me.
That's
and
amazing.
there was part of me who thought, are people going to be interested in this? I mean, it's just me standing up there, but they were. And they've all gone so well. And I get people lining up after to ask me questions. And I definitely seem to inspire people, which again is what I did on the bike, but now I get to do it to a much wider audience.
And what does that mean to you as somebody who has struggled with confidence over time? When you get to talk to people who have had that same struggle, what does that mean to you? What do they say, and how does that make you feel?
They just, it just seems that pretty much everything I talk about resonates with every single person in that audience one way or another. There's some point in my story that resonates with someone in the audience. And so that's usually the feedback I get. People will come up to me, and it was the same thing in spin class. I might mention something during a spin class that happened to me that week, and something that was difficult to handle. And it would be the same thing after spin class. People would come up to talk to me and say, I can't believe you shared that, because I went through that exact same thing last week, or something like that. And then what I realized through all of these experiences was that when you're willing to be vulnerable and really share an authentic part of yourself, that's the moment when people connect. If you're up there and it's all kind of surface and bullshit, excuse my language, people don't want that. Like, that's not interesting. And that's something I realized early on when I started to share in my spin classes. And again, that's basically what I did with the book. I mean, it's very personal, and I shared a lot. And it's what I do in the keynote speeches.
Is there a story that you share that you're always surprised resonates with other people, or you're surprised that people bring up to you?
Yes. I mean, one of the most difficult stories to tell, but I make sure to tell it, is what happened in my experience with SoulCycle and my falling out with my two partners. And I tell the story in a very vulnerable way. And, it took me a couple years to even be able to talk about it without tears coming down my face. And now when I tell it, I see numerous people in the audience with tears coming down their faces. And sure enough, in terms of the feedback I get, it's actually unfortunate and surprising to hear about how many people have gone through similar experiences where they've had a falling out with a friend or a business partner or a family member. And it seems to touch upon that because, feeling betrayed is a very, very traumatic feeling and one that's difficult to get past. And so I think that's why that particular story really touches people, because it goes right for that chord, if you know what I'm saying.
And I imagine for you too, I mean, that's such a heavy story because you were the face of the brand and it was something that you had such ownership over, and it not just ownership in the literal way, but in the sort of pride sort of way, you know what I mean? Like it
Absolutely.
was, your heart was in it. And so I can imagine that was a very difficult situation where something that you had, such pride in to end poorly is just heartbreaking. And, as I said, Kristen, it never goes away. There's no question that having been able to be successful in other ways, obviously with Flywheel and with the book and letting that take me to the next level of being able to speak in front of audiences. I mean, there were so many good things that happened after, but it doesn't ever make that experience feel less than it always has. And I tell the story that, again, getting personal, where I sat in a therapy session once. This is years after it happened. And I asked my therapist the question, and I said, is there something wrong with me? Because I can't seem to get past it. And she looked at me and she just said, why would you ever think there was something wrong with you? That was a, horrendous experience that you had to go through. And no, I mean, it was a trauma, and it was. So, is an expression someone used to say to me. And it's, I'm obviously in a different place than I was then. And as I said, that helps enormously. But it is something that will always be a part of my life and certainly part of my career story. So take me back there and tell me a little bit about what happened with SoulCycle for anybody who doesn't know that story.
Yeah. So I, founded SoulCycle in the spring of 2006 with two partners, one of whom was a very close friend of mine who I actually brought into the partnership. She and I used to fantasize about starting our own spin studio together, and neither one of us had the capital. I was approached by one of my other partners, Elizabeth, because she wanted to open a spin studio and did have the capital. However, she didn't know anything about fitness or spin or how to teach it. And so she is the one who originally approached me and said, I love your class. She was a rider in my class, and I wanted to be your method, and I want you to be the face of the business. And, I was over the moon with this proposal because I told her it's something I always wanted to do. When it happened, I felt so guilty because Julie, my other former partner, and I, as I said, used to talk about this all the time. And so I asked Elizabeth if she'd be willing to meet Julie, and she said she would. And so we arranged a lunch for the three of us, and we all hit it off together and ultimately decided to bring her in. Anyway, we opened in the spring of 2006. I ended up bringing my entire following that I had spent 5 years building at the Reebok Club. And it was that following that became the base of our entire clientele. And, it started off slowly. I was working my tail off teaching 21 classes a week because I just didn't want to take the risk of anyone else teaching. I wanted to make sure I was giving everyone a great class. And so time went on. We got to a year later, 2007, and that was when we decided to open a second location, which was in Bridgehampton. And it was after the summer of the Hamptons that our business literally exploded. And throughout this process, we hadn't had a written agreement. And so I kept saying, we need to get this together because the business is really growing. And nothing really ever happened with that. And then it wasn't until after the business just was flying off the charts that I was told that we would be ready to sign the agreement. And so a meeting was called, and I attended this meeting. And the next thing I knew, when I left that meeting, I was no longer a partner in this business. It was something that I never would have fathomed in a million years. It was horrendous for me. It felt just terribly. I couldn't understand it at all. But it happened. And, I tell it now seemingly past it and okay with it, but it's something I'll never be okay with. There was just too much in terms of what I put into that business from my heart and my soul, and years of planning and hoping that I could do this. It was a very unfortunate experience.
And so how long between the time you started SoulCycle and this moment where you went into this meeting and you weren't an owner anymore?
The meeting happened in the fall of 2007. As I said, we started the business in spring of 2006. However, there's way more to the story, and you'll understand that when I say to you that I didn't leave SoulCycle until 2009. Right. I actually had to leave and come back because I was a single mom with 2 daughters in high school, and I had to support our family. And at the time, there was no other boutique fitness. I had no place to go other than to go back to the gym where I started, where I would have been paid, I don't know, at that time, $40 a class. And it wasn't even a choice. So I had to go back and be an instructor in a business that never would have existed without me. For 2 years.
I cannot imagine how difficult that was.
It was painful every single day for 2 years. However, as I tell the story, when I would get up there and hit the play button and my 45-minute class would start, I was suddenly doing what I do. And I was in a classroom with all of these people who were my people and had no idea what had happened. It wasn't allowed to be talked about. And so they didn't know. And it allowed me, in a sense, to have those 45 minutes of peace and community and comfort. And then it would end, and I'd have to walk out and feel the reality again every single day.
That had
Talk
to
about
be
building strength.
Yes, for sure. And so what do you think was the moment that really helped you out of that situation? What, allowed you to say, okay, I won't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it was a very specific moment, which was when I was called upon to attend a meeting with these 2 private equity guys, as I call them. They always laugh at that, who became my partners at Flywheel. They sought me out and gave me this opportunity. And I thought, oh my God, like this is a gift from heaven. I mean, I can now leave, continue to support my family, and start the second competitor to the first business that I started, which was odd in itself. However, obviously Flywheel was a different concept. And so we were able to do it and do it well.
And to find co-founders who were so aligned with your own values and who really felt like good partners for you, what did that mean to you after that experience with SoulCycle?
Yeah, I mean, it just meant the world to not only have two partners who valued what I brought to the business and to the partnership, but also, talk about lessons learned. I hired a good lawyer and I was protected legally. And obviously I wasn't the first time around.
I've heard you talk about how Flywheel just felt kind of aligned with your own values and that it was such a welcoming community and it really was, it reflected you more than SoulCycle ever did, which was kind of an in crowd. What did that mean to you to create the culture that really reflected what you wanted it to be?
Yes. I mean, that was one of the greatest opportunities that I could have, was to be able to do that. I always, when I would describe the difference between the two, the best way to put it was always that SoulCycle was exclusive. It was always it always had the feeling of the club that you can't get into, but if you get in, you feel really good. While Flywheel was inclusive. We wanted everybody, every shape, size, and color to come through our doors and feel comfortable and feel good about themselves. And it felt great to be able to foster that kind of culture, because as time went on at SoulCycle, it kind of became less and less about me, understandably, with everything that happened. And so it was hard to support that kind of exclusivity because it really wasn't me.
Mm-hmm. And yet you've still managed to come out of it much stronger and been able to build from it and to move on to things like Flywheel and other projects, which I think is amazing that you've really kind of learned to turn even this very, very difficult situation into a positive.
Yes. Thank
you. Do you feel like you've been able to, through that experience and looking back even at your upbringing or your dance experience, sort of turn all of these hard times into a positive now? Do you look back and say, wow, I'm glad that some of these things happened?
Absolutely. And I know it sounds cliche and trite when one says that everything happens for a reason, but there's something very comforting, obviously, about that way of thinking. And certainly in my trajectory, it felt that way because, as you pointed out, every one of those setbacks really paved the way for my next success or my next learning moment. And I really believe that that's life. I mean, we twists and turns and setbacks and moments that feel like failure, but they're really not failure because they're there to help you learn and get stronger and move on to the next great thing.
Mm-hmm. If you could go back and talk to yourself at one of those, key moments, either, your 8-year-old self or, your early 20s New York City self, or just post SoulCycle, or any of those moments, those tough moments, and give yourself a piece of advice, which one would it be and what would you say?
Oof, that's a good question. I would love to, obviously you would love to go back and assure yourself that you're going to get through it. But that's impossible because, that would never help, because it's kind of like what I've realized is you have to go through the pain. You can't. So no matter what I would say, if I went back and told my 8-year-old self something or any phase of my life, it wouldn't have changed things, because I really do believe that we have to go through a certain amount of pain to get to where we want to get to. Maybe some people don't go through it and they never get what they want ultimately. They take the easy road, but ultimately they're not really happy. And, finding that happiness also is a lifelong process. It's something we constantly look for, and we have moments of unhappiness. But again, it's all part of life.
Yeah. If you look at your life today, can you think of a moment or a decision that you made that has been really key to your happiness today?
Trusting my gut and trusting my own thoughts about myself as opposed to everyone else's or many others. And whether it was my mother and the way she saw me, or, a friend or a mentor, I knew deep down that I had good ideas and was talented and was kind and warm and had the qualities that should make me successful, if you will. And they did. And, I talk a lot about, sometimes I'm asked about leadership skills and what kind of leader are you in business? And how did you become that kind of leader? And I always talk about the fact that I molded my leadership style after being a mother, because when I came to the world of business, which was SoulCycle and Flywheel, I had no business training, no business experience. My biggest experience was being a mom. And so I use those tools, and I'm talking about ability to be empathic, ability to listen, ability to support and build up people and encourage. I used all those qualities that I used with my daughters, with my employees, with my customers, and it made everyone feel really good. And it built a culture, especially at Flywheel, where I was able, with my partner who had similar qualities, to amass a group of people, of employees and customers who were wonderful and kind and supportive, because I always believe in trickle down. And so again, I go back to the fact that it was the maternal style that I used in my leadership style that brought about success. And I'm not sure a lot of women leaders realize that they can use those qualities.
And I think a lot of women are feeling like they are on some sort of timeline where, I have to achieve this by this age, or,
Yes.
I need to have kids by this age and get this promotion by this age. And what I think is really amazing about your story is that you had been a stay-at-home mom. You started SoulCycle, I think, when you were 48, right? And
Correct.
then your Flywheel in your 50s. I think you
52.
just totally rewrote those sort of expectations that people seem to have. And so what would your advice be to other people who are feeling like, I need to achieve this by this time?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's actually always a key moment when I'm giving my keynote speeches. And I specifically say, I'll say to the audience, people are always astonished when I tell them, and then it's the first time a lot of these people are hearing it, that I was 48 when I started SoulCycle and 52 when I started Flywheel. And if you could see the amount of jaws dropped in the audience, people are astonished. And I really feel that it's that reality and that fact alone that just inspires so many people, because it says to them, it's never too late. And you can be 50 years old and find your passion then. There are no rules or boundaries around this. And, people are obviously living longer now, and we're so focused on health and wellness and longevity. And so, why wouldn't we have more and more opportunities as we go through our life process?
Yep. Amazing. And now, as you look at your life today, where do you feel like you are in your journey with self-confidence?
I'm definitely in the best place I've ever been. I am finally owning my success, which took a while. I still have moments where people will say to me, why are you so humble? Just own it, and I've definitely gotten better at it, but at the same time, it is part of who I am to be humble. And, but I will definitely, I'm going to admit right here and now that I definitely have my own private moments where I will see, I don't know, a Peloton ad on TV, and I'll think, oh my God, like, I kind of started that.
Yeah,
Like
you did.
I started it. And I don't mean that when I say that, of course, here I go. When I say that, I don't mean I started spinning. I mean, spinning was happening before, I founded these companies, but I do feel that I was obviously integral in putting it on the map in a way that it had never been put on the map before.
Absolutely. And building a culture around it, that sort of community around it, I think never existed before SoulCycle.
Exactly. And that was, I will own that and feel very proud of that.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. And then thinking about sort of like daily practices of humility versus, kind of just owning some of your confidence. Like, what do you do that you kind of check yourself? Like, oh, I don't want to downplay myself anymore, or, oh, I'll go ahead and own that. Are there certain moments that are harder for you to be confident, or where you feel that kind of humility kicking in?
I think that, yes, there are definitely moments where the humility kicks in if I happen to be in a moment where I'm feeling sad or depressed, which I definitely do at times. And it's those moments where one starts to question everything and our instinct is to be hard on ourselves. And I definitely do that in those moments, but those moments have lessened as well for me. Again, having to do with being more comfortable in my own skin and having my self-esteem at a place where it has never been before. And, that feels really good too, to just not sink into those moments as easily as I used to at, many different times in my life.
Mm-hmm. And we've talked a lot about home in this conversation, but as your relationship with yourself and your self-esteem has evolved, how do you think your relationship with home has evolved? What do you think it gives you now that it maybe didn't before? Or how does it fuel you today in a way that it didn't before?
Yeah, I think that, again, as I was describing the house in Sag Harbor, my apartment as well has really become a reflection of me and my success. And, I like all my possessions, and it's not that there's anything too fancy here, but it's just everything that I handpicked, and whether it's a fabric choice or, a window treatment, it feels incredible to know that it all happened by my hard work. And that feels, it creates an incredible place for me to live and come home to every day. And, obviously I'm incredibly fortunate to have two homes. I mean, but again, I worked for it, and that feels great.
Mm-hmm. And now what does a life well lived look like to you today and moving forward?
Honestly, I'm living it. It's a life where I'm working less. I'm not doing the heavy lifting that I had to do for many, many years. I'm living with less anxiety about my future. I'm well into the second half of my life, and while that can be scary, there's also something exciting about it, because I'm not working as hard, and I'm doing things like going to museums more and movies and shows, and really taking advantage of New York, which I love New York City so much, and seeing friends. And I'm a grandmother now, so I get to spend an enormous amount of time with my granddaughter, who is just everything. And I'm just doing a lot of things that make me really happy. And, I find that, for a long time, when I would think about getting older, I would get very anxious about being, again, continuing to be able to support myself. But what I've realized is, as you get older and older, the focus really becomes on your health. And so as a result, I am so thankful to be healthy. And, I'm knocking on wood because, for some of us, for a lot of us, it's a crapshoot and who knows what's going to happen. But I am thankful every day now of my health and my strength and the fact that I can still do things that I do and work out on a regular basis and walk everywhere. And these are the things I'm really thankful for.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Well, this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Ruth. I really think you're just so inspiring, and I can't wait to share this with everyone.
Yay,
I want to get into our lightning round of fun questions.
Okay.
What's your favorite space in your home?
I think my favorite space might be my office, which actually used to be the bedroom of one of my daughters, and it's a pretty small room, but it's really soothing and pretty. And I have a day bed in the room that it's right up against a full wall window. So it's a very large window. So when you're lying on the day bed, it's kind of all window. It's all glass and I can see outside and you kind of feel like you're outside because it abuts right up to the window. And
yes.
I like to just, when I want to take a break from work, I just lounge on the day bed and relax. And it's just incredibly comfortable.
So nice. That is such an Upper West Side, you've got mail fantasy situation.
Right? Totally. It is.
I love it.
Yes.
What's your number one pro and number one con for living in New York City?
The number one pro is that you're never bored. I mean, if you are bored for a moment, all you have to do is walk one block outside and you're going to see something interesting. So that would be my pro. My one con would be if you're outside, out and about, and it starts to pour and you cannot get on any mode of transportation possible. There's either like no subway around, there's no bus, and there are certainly no cabs. That so is the con of New York City. Yes.
It absolutely is. What's one thing you remember about your childhood bedroom that you treasured?
I loved my childhood bedroom. My bed was situated in an alcove, and I thought that was the coolest thing, and there were curtains, and I just loved it because I could close the curtains and just have my private space. So I love that.
I love that. What's one thing that you think is off-brand about you?
About me personally?
Yeah, something unexpected, off-brand.
That I can be very compulsive about things. I think a lot of people think, if I'm thinking about what my brand would look like to others, I think people think I'm kind of laid back and relaxed and not anxious. And, but I can be very compulsive, especially about things in my home. Like, I cannot be in my bedroom with the bed unmade ever. I literally am making the bed before I have both feet out of it.
I understand. That's also like New York City. You just got to have a tidy bedroom.
Isn't it? It's so true.
So true.
Yes.
What is one household chore that you enjoy and one that you try to avoid at all costs?
I enjoy cleaning the kitchen because I'm very meticulous and I do like to cook and bake. I do that a lot. So I'm, if there's like 2 crumbs on the counter, I'm Windexing. Like I love that. Like my counters have to be immaculate. A chore that I hate and rarely do is clean bathroom floors. I don't like that. No.
That is a horrible one.
Yes.
Good answer.
Yeah, I don't like to mop.
Yeah. So that's not a satisfying chore. That's so true.
No.
What's one thing in your home that makes your life easier?
I love the faucet that I have over the stove top. So, it's called a pot filler. So,
yes.
You don't have to bring the pot to the sink and then carry and spill the water over. I just think that's the cool. And I know many people probably have it, but I think it's just the coolest thing I can have another faucet right there. It's so convenient. Yeah. I love that.
Such a good one. Who's one person you admire who you think really lives well?
Let's see. I was going to say one of my daughters, but that's never good with twins because the competition
You got to say one
never
or both.
ends.
None or both.
I know, so I can't go
but you
there.
You can say both if you want.
Okay, I will say both. In that, I think they learned well from me in terms of, creating a nice home, and they really both. I'm glad you said that because they really both have done a great job of creating really beautiful, comforting homes. And I know that I have been an influence on them because they tell me, and that makes me feel really good.
Mm-hmm. What is one thing based on your own story that you hope your granddaughter learns from you?
Oh my God. I would say, again, as a woman, as a female, to trust your gut, because I think that we all have really good guts. And I know from many experiences I've had that when I haven't trusted my gut, it's been the wrong decision. And so I would probably answer with that, as well as always reinforcing to them, how strong women are, how incredibly strong we are. But unfortunately, because of society and the struggles we face, we're kind of told that we're not. And that is something that I always want to impress upon them.
Amazing. And what inspires you to live better?
I think just always wanting to take care of myself, because I want to live a really long life, because I'm loving my life right now. And so keeping up with health and wellness, which thank God there's so many ways to do it now, is just of the utmost importance to me and inspiring to me, because it allows me to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for having us into your home. Thank you for sharing your story with us. This has been amazing. Thank you.
I'm glad that you did. I'm glad that I did, because it was really fun talking to you. Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you to Ruth Zukerman for welcoming us today. Check out her book, Riding High, and follow along with her on Instagram @FountainOfRuth. I'm Kristen Twyford, and if you enjoyed our conversation, I hope you'll subscribe to Make Yourself at Home and leave us a review. Make Yourself at Home is presented by Nines, household management software that helps you manage your properties and everything that comes with them, so you can make the most of your time at home. Learn more at ninesliving.com.